Hello team. Today for our first sauce of the week, we're going to make Espagnole or brown sauce. Um, it's a very simple sauce. It just takes a little bit of patience. Um, it's basically brown gravy. Okay. For the ingredients for today, I have beef stock. I have a cup of water. If you look at your recipe, it would call for about um, 40 ounces of stock. We're, I we gave you a quart of stock, which is 32 ounces, and we're patting it with the 1 cup of water. Okay, I have brown roux. And I want you to look at the color, so you see how dark it is. I have my tomato paste, and I have my mirepoix with my sachet peas. Um, but I didn't put it in a bag. Okay, I just have a bay leaf, a garlic, and some peppercorns, and I have a little bit of a canola oil. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. This is a fairly simple recipe. It's one of your main mother. It's a mother sauce. So all that means is that there's a sauce that we use as a base for many other sauces that are derived from this sauce. Okay. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a canola oil and put it in our pan, and we're going to cook our vegetables. Leave your bay leaf out, but the peppercorn and the garlic can go in. Okay, and this is going to go in here. And I believe your recipe says that we're going to cook this for about 15 minutes. It might take a little bit more. Okay. Notice that I'm cooking this sauce in a sauteer versus a saucepan, and the reason is because this sauce takes about an hour, but this might, if you have a bigger pan, it should help you because it'll cut your time a little bit. The wider the pan, the more evaporation there is, the faster we'll get to the sauce consistency we need. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean that we can put it on high and get away with it, because it will cook a little bit different. So we're still going to keep that medium-high heat, and then we'll turn it down and let it simmer for about 40 minutes. It might take a little bit less, but not that much less. Okay, so while you're roasting your vegetables, make sure that you're moving them around and letting them get coated with the oil. Okay, it's gonna start smelling really good. And this pan roast of vegetables, we want to get these vegetables nice and dark. Okay, so it might take a little bit longer. What I like to do is I turn it up so I can get some heat in that pan, and then I'll keep moving them, and then as I feel like if they're getting too hot, then I turn it back down and I play with the heat back and forward. But it should take 15 to 20, somewhere in there. It's the amount of time that it would take. Know that I didn't spend too much time on cutting the vegetables. You just want to keep them consistent. I have kind of somewhere in between a small or a medium dice. I cut them smaller because I feel like I can get them darker much faster than bigger vegetables. So if you feel like that's the case, go for it. I wouldn't recommend cutting them any smaller than like a medium dice. But if you want to spend your time and practice your knife cuts, go for it. But they don't need to be very precise. They need to be consistent, but they don't need to be like super square because we're going to strain them out of the sauce. Alright guys, my pan is hot, so I'm going to turn it down to about medium. I'm going to continue roasting this for a little while, and I will show you as soon as they're ready. Okay team, it's been about 15 minutes. I've been here just moving my vegetables. They're brown. I'm going to show you right now what we're looking for at this stage. Okay? So the goal is that your vegetables are nice and brown. I'm trying to get a nice shot from the camera there. don't know if you can see that. I hope you can. But notice that my pan is not burnt, which means that I did not abuse the heat, right? I cooked them a nice medium heat. If you try to cook them on high, you'll burn them in the outside. They'll look brown, but they will not develop much flavor. None of the sweetness that we want will come out of these vegetables, okay? But anyhow, when we get to this point, we're going to work with our tomato paste. That's going to be our next stage. We have to cook the tomato paste to pinçage, just like we did for our beef stock, which means that we take our tomato paste, which is already pre-measured for you, 2 ounces. That's all we need, and we're going to cook it at the same temperature until it turns a couple of shades of color. And we want to make sure that we prevent it from sticking to the bottom of the pan too much, right? And we mix it with the vegetables well, and you'll see that it'll kind of start getting runny, okay? But it'll try to get almost like brick color, and then we'll know we're there. This step is going to take you about 5 minutes. Just keep smashing it down and trying to mix it with the vegetables as much as possible, so you can break down that tomato paste so it can get to the bottom of your pan and really cook. I like using the rubber spatula for this right here. Later on I'll switch to the whisk when I bring the roux into the party, but for right now I just like using the spatula to smash it down with those vegetables. Okay, so I'm going to continue cooking. Notice that I'm going around and scraping the whole mixture and making sure it's not sticking to my pan, and then pushing it back down, and then letting that tomato paste cook a little bit, and then scraping it back up. Okay, this will take about 5 minutes and we should be good to go. So I'll see you in a little bit once I get to my tomato paste being roasted or pinçage. Okay team, it's been about 5 minutes. I've been roasting this tomato paste, looking nice and dark. I'm going to try to grab some with my spatula to show you, because I think it'll be a better view. The tomato paste is nice and dark. Nothing is sticking to my pan. I just keep smashing it and moving it back. And now we are at a place in our sauce where our next stage is deglazing. Right? Deglazing just basically means we're going to pick up all this goodies in the bottom of this pan, which is called fond. Right? And the idea is that we've been developing flavor and it sticks to the pan, and now we are going to put a liquid in here so we can pick it all up. Okay? So this deglazing, depending on the sauce, you can do. A lot of times it gets done with wine, but in this case, since this is a mother sauce, we're going to do it with stock. Or you can actually use the water, which is a smaller container, okay? So, but before I put it in here, I like turning this up somewhat high, okay? Either medium high or high, depending on how fast you work. And I'm gonna get this getting nice and hot. I don't want the stuff to burn in the pan, so I'm gonna continue moving it. And then once I feel like the pan is sizzling and good to go, I'm moving things away from where things are stuck in my pan. And then at this point, it's a good point to switch to my whisk, because it's tougher than my spatula, so I'll be able to scrape everything from the bottom. And then I'm going to pour about half of the cup of my water, and I'm going to start scraping the bottom of the pan. Now, if you have black dots in the bottom of your pan, it might not be a good idea. That means that your tomato paste overcooked. If it's dark brown, that is great. Okay, and I see that it's almost dry, and then one more time I'm going to put the rest in there. When you do this, try to do a little bit first, and then bring the rest of the liquid in here. If you do it all at once, you're going to have a harder time number one, seeing the bottom of the pan, that everything is scraped out, and number two, making sure that everything comes off, okay? And at this point, you should have something that looks like so, okay? Which is very similar to what we want the end sauce to look like, although this one is not thick, okay? So we're gonna leave this guy on high, okay? And then I'm going to grab the rest of my stock. Now the beef stock can come in. You can double check with your rubber spatula there's nothing stuck to the side of your pan. Scrape it really nicely like that. Okay. Our bay leaf can come in. Okay, I'm gonna get some of these things out of here. And now we're just gonna wait for it to come to close to a boil. And we'll introduce our brown roux. Now, you'll notice that it'll ask for more brown roux than what it usually asks for either blonde or white roux for a sauce for the same quantity. What happens here is that as you cook your roux and your roux gets dark, you're breaking bonds of gluten in your flour and the roux becomes weaker, okay? So once that happens, it's gonna ask you for a little bit more. It's usually about 2 ounces more per gallon. This is a quart, so it should be about a half ounce more than what it would typically be for a quart. And you'll notice that when we do other sauces like bechamel or velouté, and you'll see that it's less roux per quart of stock. And you've probably seen me moving my roux like that and saying, isn't this roux supposed to get really hard? Because it's supposed to be cold? And it was a little bit ago, and I microwaved it. So now I'm moving it around so I can finish cooling it down before we need it. Okay, so, but if you don't want to have a hard time jabbing something into your roux, you can microwave it and you'll end up with something that looks like this, okay? When I pull it off the heat, it's like 5 shades lighter than this. It's just after peanut butter color. And then as it sits, it gets darker. Okay. All right. So we have this is simmering right here. Okay, and we need about 4.5 ounces of this roux. And remember, you can always add more. Okay. I'm gonna do it like this. You can weigh it if that's your preference, and that's okay with me. I know about where I'm going, so I'm just gonna go like so, and then I'm going to take my whisk and immediately start whisking my sauce, okay? And you'll notice this is gonna get thick just like your chowder does. You guys, when you made chowder last week, remember when you added your roux and it got thick right away? That's pretty much what this is gonna do. Getting almost there. Remember, we need to develop somewhat of a good simmer or a boil for our roux to get to its full strength, okay? I need a little bit more. There we go. I still left a little out, but there we go. We're getting to a nice temperature now where you'll see that it'll automatically thicken. There we go. And we're looking for something that is a little bit thinner than chowder, because this is going to cook for 40 minutes to an hour. So it's going to reduce a bit. So it's going to thicken, and know that evaporation means concentration, right? And concentration means extra flavor. So it's going to get fairly strong flavored and a little bit thicker as it reduces. And that's the reason why we reduce it, is we're going to continue cooking it so it gets to a really nice flavor. Okay? Really nice here. Okay. Now we're going to let this sauce cook for about 40 minutes. I'm going to, now that I'm at a simmer, I'm going to turn it down to low. Okay? And make sure that you move it like every 5 minutes or so. Don't walk away from it. I mean, you can walk away for a minute or so, but like I would say about every 5 minutes, come and give it a whisk. Know that the roux is gonna want to go to the bottom of the pan, and it could easily burn. All right, so just the idea is that we have a little bit of patience, and this takes a little bit of time. So we're gonna continue cooking this for about 40 minutes to an hour, like I said, and then we'll strain it and season it, and then we should be done. So I'll see you guys in about that time. Hey team, I got my Espagnole here. It's been about 40 minutes. I want you to look at the side of my pan and notice that I have a line right here, and it's reduced about, I would say, maybe 35-40%. My sauce have. It has a way darker color. Looks really good. I've been whisking it from now and then. When you're making your sauce, make sure that you're not scraping all that residue from the side of the pot, or if you are, you have to do it very often, so that way you don't have big clumps of burnt sauce going into your sauce. But it's recommended. I usually just leave it. Okay. But this is looking really good, and this is almost ready to go. Okay, so we got just a couple of steps. So our next step here will be to strain it. Okay, so I have a bowl here with a strainer. I'm going to take my bowl. I'm going to pass my sauce through. Try to do that gently so you don't splatter all over your kitchen or yourself or your cat, you know. So just try to keep it clean. And then I'm just going to take a whisk and help it go through. You should have a nice velvety brown sauce in the other side, okay? Now, I always like taking my whisk or my spatula, whatever utensil I'm using for straining something, and passing it through the bottom of the sieve. That way I don't have anything dripping everywhere. Okay? And then I'm going to return the sauce to the pan. Okay? Make sure you don't have big pieces in your pan left over. Okay? And then I can take the bowl and the strainer, and that can go away. Okay? And my sauce can go back on the pan on low. Okay? And all we have left now is to season. Okay? So we have salt and pepper. And we're gonna put a little pepper here. Put a little salt. And I'm going to mix that in. Now we know that our stock had no salt. right? And that's why I went ahead and seasoned without tasting. If you're using something that has salt, obviously you want to taste it first. But now what I'm going to do, I'm going to let this cook for about 5 more minutes and let that seasoning meld in. And then once that's in there, I'll come back, we'll taste, we'll adjust seasoning, and that should. Alright team, it's time to evaluate our sauce. First things first, let's try it out. Looking pretty good. We need more salt. We definitely need a lot more salt and some pepper. Know that a sauce like this, having so much starch in there from the roux, is going to require you to give it some good seasoning. Okay. All right, you have that. I'm gonna whisk it in really good. I still have the sauce on. It's on very low. I just want to make sure that I can dissolve this salt in here as soon as possible. I'm just gonna give it a really good mix before I try it, because I know I put a good amount of salt there. Okay. Second time. That's more like it. Okay, so when we're evaluating this sauce, other than taste, what else do we need to have? We need to have a nice brown color. Okay, our sauce should be thick, but not too thick. What does that mean? When I pour it, I can feel that it's thick, but it's not gloppy, right? Also, it coats the back of our spoon, right? Like, I'm gonna go like this, coats the back of the spoon. If I pass my finger through it, it leaves some trail. All right? What can you use this for? Many things. The next step actually is to make derived sauce out of this. So, for our next video is going to be demi-glace, and we're going to take equal parts of this Espagnole sauce and beef stock and reduce them by half, and that's a completely different sauce. So we're bringing it up and we're bringing it back down. We can reduce some wine and add this. We can cook some tomatoes and put them in here. You can use it as is, right? It's brown gravy. So many uses for Espagnole sauce. Just keep an eye for burnt spots. Keep an eye for bitterness, which means burnt vegetables, right? And then keep an eye on the whole border of the pan. And as your sauce is reducing, that you're not incorporating that into the sauce if you are not moving it too often. And if you are moving it often and scraping it, you have to keep maintaining it throughout the process.